Hi, everyone. On this edition of Scouting for Growth, I will be welcoming a great friend of mine called Liz Lumley. Liz is an all-round FinTech expert who is currently the deputy editor at The Banker, part of the Financial Times. So let's congratulate first Liz, who just received the State Street's UK Press Award, Journalist of the Year for FinTech, Technology, and Digital Finance. I'm so happy to have Liz on the podcast this week because once upon a time, Liz and I were colleagues. We used to work together. Liz ran a FinTech program that was an acceleration program, actually, and I was running the insurance technology one, so the InsurTech programming. And apart from that, we must recognize that Liz has over 20 years of experience and has been a global specialist commentator on regulation, risk, data, and technology within the investment, retail, and global transaction of the banks. Liz is recognized internationally as one of the leading voices of FinTech and banking technology. And also, you will find Liz every so often on the conference circuit as she's a well-known speaker and also a conference organizer. During our discussion, Liz and I will be discussing trends that affect FinTech this upcoming year, and you will learn about her parcours to where she is today. So let's welcome Liz. Hi, everyone. I want to welcome my dear friend Liz. Hi, Liz.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. So Liz, I know you well enough, but it would be great if we could start our little discussion with an intro about you and the great things you've done in our world of FinTech.
Who am I? Who am
I? Who are you?
Who am I? So I'm Liz Lumley. What I'm doing right now is, I've been in this industry for about 28 years, kind of by accident. I always wanted to be a journalist. So most of what I've done in this space is being a reporter or an editor, covering how banks and financial services firms use data and technology. So I fell into it by answering an ad in the New York Times where all I saw was the words New York and reporter. And I'd figure out the bank stuff later, which I did. So right now I'm deputy editor of The Banker magazine, working for the wonderful Joy McKnight, who's editor of The Banker, and we're part of the FT, the Financial Times. So it's been a really, really interesting journey walking through this industry, this really sort of varied immense industry of banking and financial services. But yeah, it's been an interesting career.
I can hear an accent, Liz. Can you tell us a little bit more about the accent?
Where are you really from? Yeah, no, I grew up in Boston. I grew up in the suburb of Boston. I went to university in New York because, again, I wanted to be a journalist, and that's where all the media companies are, and magazines and newspapers. Originally, I wanted to sort of focus on politics, so I majored in communications and political science, so nothing to do with finance or technology at all. And I was working for a company called Waters Information Services in New York. And they had a London office and a New York office, and they sent us over to London for a few months. And then I came back to New York, and I kind of made it clear that if they ever wanted to send me over to London, like I would be up for it. I was 25 years old and single, and someone quit unexpectedly in the London office, and my boss came over to my desk and asked how fast I could pack. And 3 weeks later, I was in London for what I told my family would be a year. That was 25 years ago. I just ended up staying. Yeah, it was, I met my husband, man who would become my husband, and and when you get a mortgage and you have a child and everything, you end up putting down roots. So I became a citizen in 2015.
Congratulations.
Yep. So they can't kick me out now before Brexit. But yeah, so I'm originally from the US, but I am a resident and citizen of this great country, the United Kingdom.
So tell us a little bit more about your parcours. I know you are one of the leading voice in FinTech, right? I know you because of FinTech. We became colleague when I was leading the InsurTech program. In this accelerator, we worked on together, and we had some great times and great learning experiences as well. And it would be great to understand that path from becoming the deputy editor at the Banker.
So as I mentioned before, I was, I was reporting on how banks and financial services firms use data and technology, and I had worked as a research consultant, and I went back to Waters Information to launch a publication called Inside Reference Data. So I had a lot of experience about how my audience were not people on the street taking out a Revolut card. It was the people that worked in banks, working on working in different departments, working in enterprise solutions. And a group of us got together and founded a magazine called Screen, which was very well received in the industry, and then went bankrupt after 9 months. So pick your investors wisely. And then I ended up at Finextra, where I kind of built up their multimedia and video business. So when I first joined there, I would wander around events with a camera on my back and do all the video interviews, and I edited them and posted them. And I was the only one who did that, the only one who was doing that at any event anywhere. And now you go to places like Money 2020 and Cybos, and there's TV crews everywhere, but it used to be just me being chased by PR people to do a video. But it was also around that time when social media started exploding a lot as well. And I got on Twitter, poor Twitter, and my voice became amplified, and people started to, I'm full of opinions.
I know, but I love that. Right, we love that.
Yeah, I can't keep them silent. So I would, write blogs on Finextra in addition to the doing interviews with people and webcasts and events. And I started posting on Twitter, and people really kind of responded to that. And so I met a lot of people saying, "Oh, I follow you on Twitter. Oh, I know you on Twitter." And just my voice just became bigger, and because of that. So I always say a thank you to the some of the gods of social media. Social media has been very good to me in my career. But yeah, so that's how it kind of started becoming more well known. And then of course at this time, this is when kind of FinTech started emerging more and more, where the companies I used to report on were the big guys, the Reuters, IBM, Accenture, and then all of a sudden all these sort of smaller companies started popping up. So that was this new explosion. It just kind of all fit together as a storm to kind of amplify my voice.
So you became one of the first, if you don't mind me saying, videographers, so doing interview and enabling us to visualize interviews. Then you actually went into building your profile in social media, and I want to go back into social media.
Yeah.
And now you are one of our FinTech voices. So how did you combine the three? Because today, think about TikTok. People are actually more inclined to listening to 60 seconds of somebody's voice. And I recently heard from a psychologist that our brain can actually process 2 minutes of content, which we don't know. So I need to readjust my approach, actually. But then social media, social media has been good to me and has been enabling me to do, social media influencer work, actually, alongside running my business. On weekends, I have pretty much fun to build social media campaigns. And then FinTech, right? How did you every day connect those dots?
Well, I mean, it was interesting. I would love to talk more someday about what's happened with journalism over the space of the past 30 years. I originally wanted to be a magazine editor. I'm kind of glad I didn't go into that into that world, because it's probably wouldn't have a job. And it's, I write about how digital is disrupting banking every day, but you want to talk about digital disruption, talk to a journalist. The whole business model of journalism has been decimated. The Banker is part of the FT. The FT is a paywalled newspaper. The Banker is a paywalled newspaper. So I now get a lot of people saying, I want to read your article, but it's behind a paywall. And I'm like, well, you know what? You got to pay for quality. Sorry about that. So, but in seeing that journey happen, and I'm not going to say this as a way that I'm like some genius, but I remember launching Inside Reference Data and Incisive Media, and I wasn't in control of my website. And I got a scoop that Citi had named a chief digital officer. And this was like the first time a large bank had ever made data a C-level appointment. But I couldn't put it anywhere because I didn't have a website. And in fact, I went to the publisher and said, I need to put this up on the website today. And they're like, oh, we didn't know you even wanted a website. This was 2006. So I was told specifically to save the news for the paper edition.
Yeah, I remember.
And it was, so I had to wait a month for that and watch as Bloomberg and Reuters and the Wall Street Journal all got this when I had it first. And then, I went to FinExtra, and FinExtra was always a news wire, was never a paper publication. And I was told off for tweeting the news and not saving it for the website. And in my mind, a journalist, one of my mentors as a journalist is a man named Eugene Grigo, is still a journalist in this space in New York. And he said, the best journalists don't put their ego in the story. It's about getting truth out and getting the facts out and getting that story out. And so to me, doing that journalist instinct is, of course, I'm going to put it on Twitter because that's right in front of me. I'm not going to wait and sit at my desk and have that lag. And I think that that's something that a lot of people that work in this space had a hard time catching up to how the technology was changing how you do your job. And I know sometimes almost technology interferes with business models as well. You can see how, giving away the news for free on Twitter might not be the best business model, instead of saving it for the magazine. But it's been a complicated journey around that. But I knew a long time ago that no one was going to put a fat girl from on the suburbs on stage, right? It was always going to be me. So I was never being a nice girl sitting at my desk waiting to be patted on the head. So social media puts you in charge of the narrative that you're putting out in the world and the stories you're putting out in the world. So I almost, I would do this without even thinking. So social media came into this space of the way I worked, beyond, I'm looking for a word, like not self-preservation. It's something I don't think I could have stopped doing. I couldn't have said, oh, well, maybe this will get me in trouble with the powers that be. Sometimes it did, but I don't think I ever would have stopped doing that and expressing who I am as a person. And also as a journalist, people like to speak to other people.
Yeah.
And if they think they know you on social media, even though they've never actually met me before, they're more likely to sit down and have a chat because they've been following me for a few months on different things. So yeah, that's kind of a complicated answer to your question of how all these things kind of came together.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And as you said, maybe, let's find maybe some time to talk about journalism, because I want to understand this better, because, I write, and I write and I put my content usually on LinkedIn, right? The LinkedIn editor. And at the same time, I wonder whether it's right or wrong, whether I should keep my story for a journalist, but I never think about it, right? I said, okay, I've written it, go out, and then, it's all about the likes and the follow and the commentary and all those things, which you actually have on both channels. I'll just share with you a story which I heard a couple of weeks ago. So it's super interesting, actually, Liz, because I did a piece of work with one of the FinTech influencers. And so what happened is he was telling me a story where he was invited to talk at one of the major conferences like Web Summit. So what they did is that the conference had a group of influencers, and let's say, 5 to 9 of them reporting on the news using social media. And then a group of journalists doing the same. Actually, they had 40 journalists to 9 influencers. And the result of the work was that the influencer succeeded to reach over 40 million people through the campaign, while the journalists reach out something like 4 million. And so what I asked him is like, so what does it mean? Should we only use social media to do our work, or should we still use journalists? So I'm still trying to understand how this whole world works, actually. And I think it's worthwhile to find the time to talk about that topic and how we maximize the value for people out there. And you are doing that every day, right? Because you are using both. You have to manage and leverage.
More journalists need to use social media as well. That's my viewpoint.
Yeah. So, well, the reason why here is I wanted to ask you about FinTech. You're an expert in FinTech. And as we know, we are moving into 2023. So what are the top trends in FinTech?
So I can tell you what the hypey trends are and what the real trends are.
Like that.
All right. So you'll get a lot of people talking about where financial services is going with like the metaverse and Web3, and how like payments and services are going to be embedded in that world going forward. And I think that is an interesting conversation, but it's right now it's very innovation theory. It's something to talk about on stage, and nothing is actually happening. What's actually happening right now is this: we've had so much growth over the years, not just in startups, but in banks as well. There is now a turn towards efficiency and cost cutting and saving money and talent retention.
Yeah.
So that's not a sexy thing to talk about, but I guarantee that's what almost every bank is working on right now: operational efficiency.
Interesting, because we see that simplification still taking place as well in insurance, and we have a major problem around talent acquisition and talent retention. And actually, so I've done some work around the metaverse, but more virtual reality, where we are using we were identifying how VR can actually enable employers to onboard, retain, educate employee, partly the Gen Z, who are more likely to leave after 6 months. So we are actually seeing the similar patterns around needing to improve the internal organization, still digitizing it, but also finding ways to retain talent and acquire it. And, people probably find FinTech or in banking a bit sexier than insurance. So we have a major talent gap that we need to fill right now.
There's a huge amount, yeah. And quantum computing.
And we are far, it's still far, right? It's still far away, I think, quantum, but I think we need to start thinking about it now.
Yeah.
And so, okay, so it's interesting because there's similarity, but so when you look at FinTech and some of the development, so I was looking at some numbers, right, in FinTech. I think last year there were $150 billion USD invested in FinTech for the year, like in 2021. And I think the predictions will be around 100 billion this year. So, 50 billion less. than last year, but that is probably across industry the same in insurance technology, where the numbers were around 17 billion last year. It will be 10 billion this year. And, we tend to stick to our 9 to 10% investment dollars vis-a-vis FinTech. So I know you mostly work with banks and financial technology ventures. Any thought around what should we pay attention to in our less sexy industry, which is insurance?
Poor insurance. No, insurance, that's like the oldest financial services out there, insurance. It's interesting because I always take what I call a big tent view of FinTech, that to me, FinTech is anything that makes the bank better, using technology to make financial services better, no matter who does that. Now, I know sometimes when you talk about growth and investment, you're talking about like a specific company, a specific sector, groups of companies, outside big tech, outside big banks. But I kind of like taking a wider approach, that it's this sort of pulsing ecosystem of big banks and big techs and little companies and medium-sized companies and the IBMs and the piggy banking and all these companies kind of working together. I mean, insurance is one of those sectors that are always, it's the sexiest part of it is that you won't know it's there. I mean, we've had insurance embedded into things for a very long time. When you buy a car, for example, but you want to see that in the purchase when almost you don't know it's there, and you only know it's there when you need it. And I think that's harder to achieve than people realize. Having that service to the customer there when they need that service, because I think this is not just insurance. This is this idea of owning the customer so that you can sell them more stuff, is the mindset, I think, of a lot of people in the industry, instead of owning the customer so that you can serve them better, which I think would actually end up making them a more profitable customer in the long run. Yeah. But that's not the mindset I think a lot of people have. So yeah, insurance is one of those things that you only want it there when you need it. I mean, for example, a few years ago, we came home from a weekend away and the boiler had exploded. Our kitchen was just, it was steam everywhere. There was water everywhere. And of course, what you do in that panic is you open up your digital yellow pages and you call a plumber, who immediately came and turned off the water. But what we should have done is called our insurer to get a plumber that's in the insurance plan. Mm-hmm. Right? So, but wouldn't it have been great if you opened up your phone and it's kind of, this is all permissioned and everything, and it would show you the plumbers you can call, because your house knew what your insurance plan was, so that in that panic, it's there when you need it. That's a future I think that is, I want to see more people envisioning.
But this exists already, right? And not with every insurer, so you need to do your research. But you touch upon a very important topic, another buzzword, embedded finance. So we are moving into embedded insurance. And this year, I mean, for the past 2 years, there have been a lot of skeptic, because when we think about embedded is not new. When you think about calling your broker and or going to Marks and Spencer, and when you go into buying your checkout, you have on the side your credit card advertisement and your insurance advertiser. It's a form of embedded, right? And so embedded has become, I guess, a little bit sexier, because it's not just about sales and distribution. Now it's about infrastructure, right? Embedding services. What you are talking about, I think, around the customer engagement, where you're actually building digitized infrastructure where the widgets are fully automated to actually drive the customer value. So combining those services for finance with non-finance. And now you may know I've been doing some work around embedded house. So looking at the world of embedded, can you tell us a little bit of the story of embedded in finance? And, your example is a very crucial one for us. But I think over time that embedding may actually be in everything we see around us, but insurance.
I thought insurance is the most likely to be embedded.
It is going to be embedded, but the way you're going to find it may not be around calling maybe some of the leading insurance companies. It may be as you go and buy maybe a dress, maybe as you go and buy a handbag. You see what I mean? This more consumer-led approach to insurance. Some startups we've done very well are working with some of the leading auto manufacturers and embedding the insurance straight into the car purchased. So what's your view on this world of, another buzzword, but one I think which is going to be significant for the year to come?
No, I think banks need to get their head around that it's a good thing for them as well. Having people want banking services and financial services, but it needs to be where they're doing their living, and having those services embedded into, having it from a secure regulated entity, but embedded into where you're doing the activity is the future. And I think but it's cultural as well. Banks need to understand that it's a better situation for them and for the customer, and they're not losing that ownership going forward. But that's because of that culture, it will probably take longer to get there, but bringing banking to where you do your life. The banks, they're off the high street now. We don't need to go to them, but they need to come to us to Absolutely. Where this happens. But that's where we're moving forward. Definitely. That's where we're moving forward. You just have to get there. And there's a lot of players pushing that forward.
So, you made a good point around, I've not visited a bank forever. And I think the last time I went into a bank was before COVID, when, still you could find NatWest, in the city of London, right? Just maybe because it was there and I needed some cash and, there was a big queue outside. But it is true, we don't need to go into those environments. So what do you think when you look at FinTech? Because now you have, the Revolut and the Starling Band and the Pioneers and all those, payment platform, which are giving you opportunity to do payment in different ways, and the banking sector. Because I'll tell you, the bank I was with before COVID, I had to say bye-bye because they could not deal with my demands while I was sat at home, could not get a call in. And so I had to go to digital banking instead, truly digital banking. So what are the challenges the bank's still facing, which I assume can be good lesson learned for our insurance colleague listening to this podcast? And what are maybe the advantages and probably some of the struggles still fintechs are experiencing?
So, one of the things I've always, people don't like their bank, but they trust it, right? That's always been kind of the ace in the hole for banks, that they're regulated. Your money is to to a certain amount safe there. You're not going to lose it. If you're a victim of fraud, they're used to dealing with that. I have Radio 4 on during the day, and today on You and Yours, they did a whole piece, 20 minutes, on people who are customers of Revolut and who are victims of fraud, and the way. And this isn't particularly necessarily, but the whole episode was about Revolut, about how Revolut, which is, has a banking license in Lithuania, but not over here, was not dealing with the customer service in a way that a bank would if your card was stolen or you were, phished, or you clicked on the wrong link type of thing. And, and some of the stories of these people was they had like 60, 70,000 pounds on a Revolut card. And I've got a traditional bank card. I've got a Starling card. I use my Wise card all over the world because you can just change the currency. But I have like my Wise card, I've got, I don't know, 200 quid on it. I would never put tens of thousands because it's not a bank. You know, my paycheck goes into my high street bank account. And then I take out little bits on my other cards that I use. And I don't think, you know, I know that there's all this hype around that fintech exploded because of the financial crash and the loss of trust in banks. But, you know, being mad at, I think that the noise that sometimes was perpetrated over the past 10 years about the hype of fintech, that banks don't know what they're doing. And I'm not saying that the world shouldn't be mad at 2008 because, you know, there was a lot of nefarious dealings going on, but they are secure regulated entities. Okay, at the end of the day, they are. And that shouldn't be dismissed. Regulation is not something that you move fast and break to get to the innovation. Not when it's my money and your money. And I think that there are more people like waking up to this. There was this bank that I met at Money 2020. I'm not going to name them because they were absolutely ridiculous. But anyway, one of their selling points was that there's no bankers there, right? We're a bank run by not bankers. We're all engineers. We're all software people. And I'm like, would you go to a dentist? It's like, we don't have any, no one went to dental school. You know, it's like, I don't know. Can I have someone that went to dental school to do, like, I'm, you know, and I'm not saying this like banks are wonderful angels and they've never done anything wrong. They've done a lot of things wrong, but there's a reason why it's a bank. A bank is not a name you pick out of a marketing book. It is a legal term. It is a secure, regulated entity of where your money is safe. And I think that more people need to understand this and realize this.
Yeah.
And understand that one of the reasons why, you know, banking and financial services has not been disrupted like journalism has and video rental stores, and because it's just not the same industry.
Yeah, interesting. And I mean, your example is fascinating to me because I mean, I listened to some of the stories for Revolut, and, you know, I was at Web Summit with one of my insurance colleagues, and we were listening to Nicholas talking about his platform as an organization and the volume of customers they have, and then moving into like starting bank into B2B business banking, and still, and also if you look at their website, you will see that they actually say that the money is safe for business to business, so business banking up to £85,000. But what we are hearing here is maybe not completely regulated as a proper bank is today. So people need to be careful around really understanding the fine lines.
They're not regulated in the UK. You've got to, you know, think about that. There are reasons why. Yeah.
Interesting. And so we talked about, you know, why we still need to care for the bank, but what are the main things the bank needs to still do better to actually keep their customers and actually bring more into the doors? Because all of us have traditional banks. We all need traditional banks anyway.
I mean, yeah, they've done a very good job with like, you know, copying some of the little nice things that fintech banks and fintech companies have brought to us. You know, I think I saw someone on stage a few months ago said, we love having fintechs in because we can like see what they do and then copy it. But I mean, hey, the end justifies the means. But one of the things I think that is going to happen over the next year or so, maybe a few years, you know, we've had this period of low interest rates, and now we're going to higher interest rates, and we have a cost of living crisis, which is going to hit a lot of people very hard. And it's going to start hitting, you know, the middle classes very hard when the mortgage rates go up, and banks are going to profit a lot.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a PR minefield, because I don't think banks are going to suffer a lot over the next few years, but their customers are.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And they need to address that somehow a bit better than maybe they would have in the past.
And I think we've seen that, at the beginning of the pandemic, and within 1 year in, and you look at the bonuses and some of the banks, and no banking institution really had been affected. Cost of living got higher. Your food bill got higher, and your interest rates on your cards got higher. So at the end of the day, I would say some of the sectors were not as affected as others. But as we are moving to a high interest rate, high inflation world, high cost of living, some of the financial institution needs to be actually pay attention to this very carefully.
Yeah.
So when you look at the future, we are going to take us into 2023 and take us into what you would want to see and what you will want to do next year, Liz, around, how do we change our world and make it a little bit better? What are the things we need to watch out for? And what are you going to focus on yourself?
Well, we're going to be all in the metaverse, obviously. We'll all just be visibly doing this. But yeah, no, I mean, focusing more on the fact that human beings use financial services. Most of the world's population uses financial services in some shape or form, unless you live in a cave somewhere in the middle of nowhere in Montana. So understanding that customer journey and who the customer is really, and not the perfect customer, and not the happy journey, and not so because I think banks are going to see a lot of people over the next few years that had previously spent 20 years not missing a mortgage payment, and it's going to be tough, and that's going to hit some people for the very first time. So yeah, I'd like to see, I'm sorry to repeat myself again, but yeah, understanding who the customer really is, not just in a sell you more stuff thing, but understanding how to service the customer, and understanding financial services role in society. Because I'm one of those strange people that kind of, I think a secure, regulated bank account is the cornerstone of civilization. If you just look at how many people are denied access to these things around the world, it's the poor, it's women. There's a power in controlling your own money. Banks need to realize that, yes, they're profit-making entities, but they're like schools and hospitals. They're part of the fabric of what makes human civilization work. And I think they need to see themselves in that way.
Yeah, I mean, you're raising a very important point, which is one of the significant area, we are trying to address even in insurance, which is called the protection gap, and serving the underserved and the vulnerable. I mean, if you look at our protection gap, if you start splitting it up, right now I've been looking just at the protection gap within the context of embedded healthcare, just to get proper healthcare, and that range into trillions globally. And Swiss Re has been writing a lot about it, and trying to find ways for us as working with young ventures to start designing products and services which are not just for the wealthy, but also to be for the less wealthy. And it's hard, because then you need to look at affordability. And affordability becomes, as we have, if you don't mind me using the term, positive discrimination, right? Because you have an underwriting score, and you need to make sure that what you're underwriting, you're not just underwriting for the sake of having claims. And so it's about finding a way to create fairness. And it is hard, right? When you don't always have all the data available in banking. You have open banking. We don't have yet open insurance. Liz. And so there's so much more that needs to be done to actually allow to have this even playing field where you can look at the underserved and the vulnerable. You can start building and shaping the product to the future, which are affordable, and base that on the right data. But you see, there is still regulation.
Mhm.
around us to protect, from the health and insurance people, to protect people so that they are not discriminated against.
It's tough. It's not easy. It's not an easy. I wish there was like a silver bullet. You should do this and everything will be fine. And it doesn't work that way. No.
It doesn't work like this. And so tell me, you are going to be doing some events and conference and awards. What do you enjoy the most? On the positive note, what do you enjoy the most when you actually interact with the banks you're working with and awarding them in some ways for the work they're doing in life?
So going back a little bit, I mean, I started off like in trading floors and investment banking. And, I've reported on every single part of the bank, retail bank, transaction bank, corporate bank, all of it. And, one of the things that kind of annoys me sometimes when the public perception is everyone's a wolf of Wall Street. Everyone's doing coke on the trading floor and, like it's the 80s. And I went to a roundtable. We did a roundtable at Bracken House last week, and it was full of people who work in operations and sales, and they spoke very passionately about that customer journey and about helping people that might be in vulnerable situations. And I thought, I wish sometimes people could realize that there are human beings that work at financial services and work at banks, and a lot of them are good people.
Yeah.
Like sometimes there are organizations where the structure and the culture makes it very difficult to change things, and it makes it difficult to innovate. There's a lot of writings on this, but they don't go to work every day thinking, how am I going to screw the customer? Most people go to work thinking, how do I make things better? What strategies do we have? How can we pull this investment to fix this? What technology can we use? Who can we hire? And there are a lot of people in this industry that go to work every day like that. And some of them have more success than others. And sometimes it just depends on the teams they're in or the organizations they're in. So that's why I kind of like talking to as many people as I do, because you get to understand the real human beings behind what can be kind of a misunderstood industry at times. In general. But yeah.
It's absolutely fair point. Remember all the time we were working with some great banks when we were working together, and we were working with, head of innovation and head of transformation. We were seeing operational sales distribution people coming to meet the startups to actually learn how they can make the bank better and the financial services institution better. And I think it's important to remind ourselves that digitization touched so many people, and it's beyond the trading floor as well.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Liz, where can people find you? You mentioned the banker, the FT. Where can we go and find you if we want to know more about you and people want to reach out and learn how maybe they can bridge the gap between banking and
Well, I'm on LinkedIn. I am on Twitter while it lasts. I might have hope that it'll stay around at Liz Lum on Twitter. And I'm at I get an FT email address, elizabeth.lumley@ft.com. I'm on TikTok, but TikTok is my non-financial I don't, unless you are sipping a cocktail on a beach in Greece, I don't want to know you on TikTok. Those are the people, that's the content that I go on to for that. But like LinkedIn and Twitter are probably the two big social media platforms that I use. You can contact me that way.
Well, thank you so much, Liz. We will definitely continue to follow you, check out your amazing work. And, congratulations again on the award. This is wonderful.
Thank you so much.
We need more. We need more awards for you and more awards in our, women industry. Thank you for being with me today. And
thank you for inviting me.
I look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. If you like this podcast, subscribe now, share with your friends, and if you enjoyed it, please give it a 5-star review. Also, if you want to cover any specific subject with me, contact me on Instagram under Sabine VdL Officials or LinkedIn under Sabine VdL. Thank you.